Why is it so incredibly hard to talk about politics or religion, How can people who are genuinely good, who want the best for the world, end up in these vicious, nasty disagreements? Okay, let's dive into this, because one of the most influential psychological theories of the last decade has a fascinating and maybe a little unsettling answer.
You've definitely been there, right? You're in a debate, you're laying out all your facts, your logic is airtight, but the other person just isn't getting it. It feels like you're not even in the same conversation, like your words are just bouncing off some kind of invisible wall.
Well, what if I told you that, in a way, you are speaking different languages? And the reason why has everything to do with this powerful, hidden force inside our minds. A force that social psychologist Jonathan Haidt pictures as a giant elephant. So, what's this big idea? Haidt presents this powerful metaphor that completely flips our whole understanding of how we make moral decisions. It really challenges this notion that we're primarily rational creatures. So, Haidt says our mind has two parts. First, you've got what he calls the elephant. This is our intuition. It is fast, automatic, emotional. It's that gut feeling you get in a split second. The second part is the rider, and that's our conscious reasoning. It's slow, it's controlled. Now, the rider might think he's in charge, holding the reins and all, but he's sitting on top of a 6-ton elephant. When there's a disagreement on which way to go, who do you think is going to win?
And this right here leads to Haidt's central and kind of provocative claim. The rider, our reason, didn't evolve to find the truth. Nope, it evolved to serve the elephant. Its main job isn't really to steer, but to act like a press secretary, just coming up with after-the-fact justifications for wherever the elephant already decided it wanted to go. So the crucial takeaway is this: we feel first, and then we invent the reasons to explain that feeling.
Okay, so if our intuitive elephant is running the show, what guides it? I mean, where do these gut feelings even come from? This brings us to the second really cool part of the theory, what Haidt calls our moral foundations. So the idea here is that our righteous minds are kind of like tongues, but with 6 different taste buds. We don't just taste sweet and salty, we have this full range of moral flavors. And these are supposedly innate psychological systems that were shaped by evolution to help us solve social problems.
So here they are, the 6 foundations. Let's just run through them so they can really sink in. First up is care/harm. This is our built-in sensitivity to suffering, that urge to protect others. Next is fairness/cheating, which is all about justice and rights and reciprocity. The third is loyalty/betrayal. That powerful feeling of being a team player and putting your group first. Fourth, we've got authority/subversion, which is about our sense of respect for tradition and hierarchy. Fifth is sanctity/degradation. This deals with our ideas of purity, sacredness, and even disgust. And finally, number 6 is liberty/oppression. That's our internal alarm bell that goes off when we feel like we're being controlled or dominated. This bumper sticker, it perfectly captures a clash over one of these foundations. The idea of the body as a temple, something to be kept pure and sacred, that is a classic expression of the sanctity foundation. The idea of it as an amusement park is a total rejection of that foundation, probably in favor of another one, like liberty. It's the exact same issue, just seen through 2 totally different moral lenses.
So, how do these 6 moral taste buds explain our deep political divides? Well, according to the research, this is where it gets really interesting. It turns out, different political groups don't just have different opinions, they seem to have entirely different moral palettes.
And this chart just illustrates the core finding perfectly. You see those double check marks? People on the political left tend to build their moral worldview primarily on the care and fairness foundations. Now look at the conservatives. They draw from a much broader palette, using all 6 foundations more or less equally. They respond to arguments about loyalty, authority, and sanctity in ways that often don't even seem to register on the liberal moral palette.
So here's the crucial point. It's not that one side is moral and the other one isn't. It's that they are operating from fundamentally different moral matrices. When a conservative talks about patriotism, they're speaking the language of loyalty. A liberal who's focused on care might just hear the language of exclusion. See? They're both making what they feel are valid moral claims, but their taste buds are just tuned to different frequencies. And here's the key insight. This means so many political arguments aren't really about the topic. They're clashes between these unstated moral foundations. We think we're arguing about tax policy, but we're feeling a conflict between fairness and loyalty.
Now that is a really compelling story. It makes a lot of sense, right? But is it the whole story?
Well, moral foundations theory has its critics, and their arguments are just as important to understand. They basically ask one simple question: are we really that powerless against our intuitive elephants?
So the first major pushback is against this idea that reason is just some weak little press secretary. Critics say Haidt is way too defeatist. They argue that even if we do often follow our gut, that doesn't mean we have to, and they've got evidence. In one fascinating study, people were asked to sign this gag contract, selling their soul for $2. Initially, only 23% agreed, but after the person running the experiment challenged their reasons for saying no, that number jumped up to 40%. The writer, it seems, can sometimes convince the elephant to change course.
And to add to this, some researchers argue that rationality itself might be evolving culturally. Joseph Henrich coined this great term, weird, to describe societies like many of ours. He argues we're psychological outliers. We're way more individualistic and analytical than most cultures in human history. And as more of the world becomes weird, well, maybe the rider is getting stronger everywhere, learning to steer that elephant with a little more skill.
Okay, so beyond the whole debate about reason, there's a second, more practical criticism. The theory is supposed to help us understand each other. But what if, in practice, it actually builds bigger walls between us?
This quote really gets to the heart of that concern. Some critics worry that by emphasizing these deep, seemingly innate moral differences between groups, the theory might actually backfire. Instead of promoting understanding, could it encourage us to see our political opponents as a fundamentally different kind of person, making it even harder to find common ground?
And get this, the data on something called moral reframing seems to support this worry. As this chart shows, when you frame your argument in your opponent's moral language, it's actually way more effective at firing up your allies than it is at persuading your opponents. It seems to just entrench your own base more than it builds any bridges.
And finally, there's the classic nurture argument. Sociologists especially push back on the idea that these foundations are innate products of evolution. They argue our morality is much more a product of our socialization, the values we soak up from our family, our school, and the culture all around us. So maybe it's not deep-seated nature, but simply what we've been taught to value.
So, we've got a powerful theory and some pretty powerful critiques. Where does that leave us? What should we take away from all this? Is there a way to use these ideas to actually improve our conversations?
Here's what I think is the most valuable takeaway. It's this. Whether these moral foundations are hardwired by evolution or installed by culture, it almost doesn't matter. The theory gives us a powerful new vocabulary. It lets us diagnose a disagreement. We can stop shouting about the issue itself and start asking, okay, which moral taste buds are being activated here? Are we having a fight about care, or is this actually about loyalty or sanctity? And this presents us with a choice. We can keep going down the path of vilification, seeing people who disagree with us as just stupid, irrational, or evil. Or we can try to use this framework to understand their moral matrix. Now, that doesn't mean we have to agree with them, but it allows us to see their position not as a moral failing, but as an expression of moral values we just might not prioritize as highly.
Ultimately, that's the question this whole theory leaves us with. Before we can understand why they believe what they do, maybe the first step is to get curious about our own elephant and the moral taste buds that guide it through the world. What if mapping our own moral blind spots is the key to finally seeing what others see so clearly?